Hey, it's Rayse the Game, and in this video, I'm going to talk to you about a Leaving Cert student who told me she can't retain the information. She can't retain what she's learned. And this is a huge issue for Leaving Cert and Junior Cert students all over the country, for thousands and millions of students all over the world. And if you're the parent of a teenager who's got ADHD or dyslexia or dyspraxia or autism, neurodiverse teens, they particularly struggle with task initiation and also with this ability to retain and recall lots of information because they can't focus, they can't remember. And this student I was coaching this morning, let's call her Alexandra, she has ADHD. Now she wants to do well, but the big problem is she's struggling because she doesn't have the tools on how to learn and how to memorize. She doesn't have these skills, and that's what I teach. I teach study skills. I work particularly with neurodiverse teens, and we teach them this toolkit of how to be able to study quicker, how to retain lots of information, and how to recall the information. And when I asked her, what was going on, what she said hit me like a brick. In fact, she said, Ray, it's like there's a wall in my brain. The information goes in for a second, but then it's gone. And I just thought that was such a powerful statement. Many students say that to me. They try to learn, but they can't retain the information. And in fact, she said to me, it feels like my brain is a jar, and when it's full, nothing else can get in. And that's really interesting because she sees her brain as having a fixed level of storage. And that's just not true. We know the brain is plastic. We know the brain is capable of retaining lots of information. But a lot of students have this fixed concept with their brain. If I learn one thing, it means I can't remember something else. And in fact, she said to me about biology, she said, there's so much to learn that I feel I don't have enough space for the other subjects. And for any Leaving Cert student, the courses are big, and that's what creates the anxiety. And in fact, for many students, they put off studying. Why? Because they say to me, what's the point in studying? Because in 3 weeks' time, I won't be able to remember the stuff in the exam. And that's why so many students leave their study to the last minute. That's when the anxiety kicks in. That's when the stress kicks in. And in fact, 72% of young people in a Leaving Cert year give up a hobby, give up a sport because they're under severe exam stress. So one of the things that I worked on with Alexandra today was not just study technique, but I showed her how to learn. In fact, I'm a big fan of what we call active learning. Now, there's two ways to learn, passive and active. Passive learning is what lots of students do. I did this. So this is where you take out your book, you highlight, and then you rewrite into the book. And you feel you're doing something, but it's just not that effective. And in fact, it's quite passive. Your brain is wandering all the time. But active learning is when you're focused. It's when you are using multisensory learning. You're using your eyes, your ears, and you're doing something. Visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. And when you combine the three of these, you start to speed up the learning. And in fact, I use another technique called the Feynman technique, where you take out a whiteboard and you start to what I call teach and tell. You pretend you have a class in front of you, and if you're studying a biology, today we were looking at the topic of ecology, we start looking at definitions, but now we're focused not on getting the information out of the book, we're focusing on getting the information into our brain and retrieving the information, and we use the whiteboard in order to do this. And then what I did with Alexandra was we looked at our brain. And in fact, your brain is really powerful. Left brain is logical, right brain is creative. And it turns out, because I use psychometric tools and testing, she's right brain dominant. What does that mean? She's creative. And the trick to creative learning is to use images, colors, shapes, your imagination. And then I did some memory training with her, and she went up by 50 to 100%. She actually doubled her memory capacity so fast and was a start to able to remember the definitions. We started to work through the topic of ecology, and she was buzzing. Why? Because she now knew about active learning, she knew how to retain, and she knew, more importantly, how to make the information stick. So the goal of the game is to get the information into your brain, but make it stick. And how do we do that? Well, to get it in, it's active learning. To get it out, we use a technique called retrieval practice. And that's why I love this Feynman technique. So the big thing for Alexandra today, she was buzzing at the end of the session. She now could recall, she could retain, she could remember. Why? Because she now built up this skill set. And that's what builds confidence. That's what builds self-belief. And that's where students don't have to study more, they actually study less. And that's why I invented something called a study sprint. This is why in 1 hour block, we can do 3 20-minute bursts, 3 20-minute sprints, and we can do up to 3 topics in 1 hour. And this is super powerful. And once you have this skill set, this toolkit, this is what creates confidence and the self-belief. And by the end of this session, she said to me, now I feel I can remember. And her confidence, you could see the confidence grow. And this is when we switch from passive to active learning, and we switch from forgetting to remembering. So if you like this video, click a like. If you want me to come to your school, go to raysethegame.com. If you want me to coach your teen, and if they have ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, or they are autistic, then get in touch. And don't forget, guys, day by day we are raising the game.